Alright guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new video. In this video I want to talk about the actual reality of the Matrix. When I speak of the Matrix, I'm not speaking in metaphor, I'm speaking literally. The Matrix exists, ladies and gentlemen. The Matrix is a very real part of our lives here in this world. And most people will go the duration of their lives completely unaware of the fact that they're in it. Just like the original Matrix film, the first one, which in my opinion is the best. Most of the people that were in the Matrix had no clue. In fact, 99% of them, they had no clue they were in the fucking Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the Matrix films are stories that are very imbued with a Gnostic current. Not agnostic, I'm talking about Gnostic. The two are completely different. These films are stories about what's actually going on in this world. Now, some of the stuff, or quite a bit of it in the Matrix film is not supposed to be taken literally. They're parallels of sorts, but that's besides the point. The fact of the matter is that the real Matrix that we're living in right now is 10,000-fold more dangerous than the Matrix in the actual movies. The Matrix that we live in, ladies and gentlemen, is a soul-snatching system that wants to hoodwink you into living an artificial life that takes you out of alignment with what the Stoics like to call eudaimonia. The path of the higher self, the inner daemon, not diamond, talking about daemon, D-A-I-M-O-N. So here in the material realm, ladies and gentlemen, you're thrown into this crazy world at a very young age. It's like you're thrown onto a conveyor belt once your birth certificate gets put into the system, and you're forced and you're told what to do. In this system, ladies and gentlemen, hoodwinks you into living a life without what the Stoics called arete, which in layman's terms can be considered virtuous action, things that align you with attaining your higher self or becoming one with it, eudaimonia. Now, I don't think a lot of people who use the word eudaimonia know what it actually means. I don't think most people actually know what the higher self is, ladies and gentlemen, but the higher self is the realized self, the awakened you. When the Christ consciousness moves up your cerebral spinal system and goes into the promised land, the pineal gland and the pituitary, and allows you to see the truth, that's how you become the enlightened version of yourself, your higher self. The higher self isn't just the part of you that, forces yourself to get all your tests or your study done and all this other nonsense. Most people don't know what the higher self is, ladies and gentlemen. The higher self is the realized, awakened, fully actualized you. And that process is attained through the arousal, stimulation, and rising of the kundalini, the twin serpents. This is what the Gnostics called gnosis, the awakening of the spark. The Matrix seeks to hoodwink us into living lives without action, or the Matrix seeks to get us to live in a world, ladies and gentlemen, where by default, if you interact with it, it's very easy to not live with, again, what the Stoics called arete, which is, in layman's terms, virtuous action that aligns you with eudaimonia. There's so many other things that could be said about that. I don't have time to get into it in this video. But I will say that the Matrix supplies a lot of temptation, does it not? And when you give in to those temptations, when you give in to evil, that was a walnut falling on the shed back there. When you give in to evil, you don't align yourself with virtuous action. And virtuous action is what aligns you with eudaimonia, your higher self. So by plastering all of the temptation around us, ladies and gentlemen, they're literally putting you into a simulation like a game where you are being forced to either go along with the temptation and lose your virtuous action, lose your integrity, you're sacrificing it, folks, for temptation. Or on the other hand, you can use your mind, your God-given mind, and question everything. There's literal, I'm pretty sure a couple of walnuts, I don't know if you guys can hear those. One of them just almost hit me. But I think you catch my drift. One of the ways, there's so many mechanisms of how the Matrix works. It's a fascinating subject. The Matrix sole purpose, ladies and gentlemen, is to take you out of alignment with your higher self, with your the angelic you. I have many videos discussing this in great detail. Watch them. So, unfortunately, some of the things that I bring up, every time I bring them up, I try to give more information to explain exactly what they are, but for time's sake, I just can't do it. The Matrix seeks to keep you from being actualized to becoming realized. And it's done through temptation. It's also done, ladies and gentlemen, by throwing you into chaos before you even have time to develop a mind of your own when you're young. And what I mean by that, ladies and gentlemen, is that you have a few good years where you have some freedom here in hell, in the Matrix. Before you know it, you're off to school. Before you know it, even when your mind is super impressionable and you haven't even, again, developed a strong foundation of who you are, what your purpose is, yada, 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 you're thrown into preschool and you're told what to think by your teachers. And it's not even necessarily the curriculum that mind controls you, ladies and gentlemen. It's all of the information that you stack inside of your mind. You see, you come into this world without an instruction manual. And you're thrown in to these experiences, such as school, you name it, where you have all these obligations. Now, instead of having a free mind, ladies and gentlemen, while you're growing up, you have obligations, tasks, assignments, homework, you name it, and you have to focus on all this stuff if you want to pass through the system, if you want to pass to the next grade. So you're forced to occupy your time with curriculum. Now, when you were younger, you most likely had a very strong connection, or a stronger connection, to nature. Your youth was probably quite magical. Am I wrong? Most people can remember their magic of their youth. This ended when you started. This ended by the continual waves, if you will, of the Matrix, giving you obligations, this, that, and the other. And slowly, before you know it, ladies and gentlemen, those last little glimmers of the free mind that you had when you were younger are replaced by, again, being told that you have to grow up, being told that you have to get all these assignments done or you're not going to amount to anything. You'll probably end up homeless if you don't get everything done on time, and this, that, and the other. And, you know, you've got to do soccer, swimming, and this, that, and the other. And you've also got to get your injections next week. We've got to take you to the orthodontist. It's just all this stuff. And I'm not bashing it per se. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, there is no way around dodging the fact that all of this stuff takes up what's in here. The Matrix exists to not only tempt you, but it fills your mind full of stuff before you even have a chance to develop a mind of your own. And that's where the mind control is, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that makes sense. So the Matrix is a very real thing. There is an entire labyrinth, an entire just set of worlds around us that we can no longer see. There are literal layers of energy around our human body, ladies and gentlemen, that are geometrically perfect that we can no longer see anymore. There are layers of energy around plants. There are literal spirits around us pretty much at all times. We have had our senses conditioned, and we are in a state that resembles deep sleep. Now, if that isn't synonymous with the story of the Matrix, then I don't know what the hell is. What happens to people that are plugged into the Matrix? Their senses are conditioned. They're trained to operate in a specific way, ladies and gentlemen, just like ours here in this world. So I just wanted to make a brief little video explaining the fact that the Matrix is real. When I talk about it, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not speaking I'm not using it as some poetic phrase. No, there is a real system here that is seeking to control humanity and the progression of our evolution. And the stuff that I talked about in this video only begins to scrape the tip of the iceberg as to how advanced and how complex these layers of mind control are. We are being shut off from our kundalini and we are participating with it. That's the part that most people don't want to accept, that maybe, just maybe, you've allowed a little bit of evil into your heart. People want to blame everything on this system, on the matrix, and at times it may sound like I do. But sometimes I fail to put an emphasis on the fact that it requires your participation to participate with. The temptation is only valid if you are tempted enough to give into it and accept it. And we've all done this to some extent, ladies and gentlemen. You can, however, you can rid yourself of all of your past evils. I don't want to get into a whole preachy rant. We'll save that for an upcoming video. All you've got to do is start walking the opposite direction, depending on how evil you've become, because there's some people, ladies and gentlemen, that have literally lost their soul to this system. There are certain forms of evil that disconnect you entirely. I'm gonna get pegged here by this walnut. These walnuts, holy shit. That one just almost hit my camera. There are forms of evil that you can commit here in this world that separate you from what I like to call God. This removes the hedge of protection, ladies and gentlemen. This removes your shielding. Now, to be honest, a large percentage of the actual physical people here that run the Matrix, these vampiric bloodlines, they are people who have done things like this. These are the people who attract the Archon. The Archon is attracted to people like this, you name it. It's a vice versa kind of thing, if you will. There are specific bloodlines, there are specific families, ladies and gentlemen, that own the majority of the world's wealth, have funded all the wars, and have set up this system. And there's plenty of proof to prove this. The world that you live in is not what you think it is, in any way, shape, or form. This is another layer of the mind control, ladies and gentlemen. You come into this world creating this viewpoint where you think that, okay, the way I view the world, that's the way it is. No. So you're indoctrinated fucking mosquitoes by these scientists and these so-called experts. You do know that a scientist can be bought off or bought out, ladies and gentlemen. Do you not know that? Science is like the religion of the future. It's insane. Now, I'm not saying that science doesn't have merit, but nowadays it's like this nowadays people get I don't even want to get into that, ladies and gentlemen. What I was trying to say before my tongue got tied was that nowadays, if you go against the mainstream scientific model, you're considered crazy or a quack, this, that, and the other. Look at what scientists believed 150, even 100 years ago. What the quote-unquote doctors and scientists and the best minds of even 100 years ago believed at that time. What they believed and said was the absolute truth is now considered quackery by today's so-called experts. So it's really important, at least in my opinion, to remain fluid with your belief systems, because beliefs can be very dangerous, and beliefs can put you in boxes. And when you're inside of a box, ladies and gentlemen, it can be difficult to get out, because those boxes, that's a symbol of your belief system. And beliefs, when you actually believe something wholeheartedly, it instructs the subconscious mind to solidify that in the material world. This is why people can literally be looking at something that's truthful right in front of their face, but it just doesn't register with them because it's outside of their box, it's outside of their belief system. The rigidity of the mind is a very dangerous thing, and most people's heads are full of dried concrete. fluidity of the mind is essential. This is why I'm constantly reminding you guys to get outside and get some fucking sunlight on your skin. Get out of your New World Order kill pod, your home, and go find a body of water and sit by it. Reflect. Ground yourself. Do something creative with your time here, ladies and gentlemen. You have one chance in this world, in this life. In this life that you're living right now, even though you are an immortal entity, in this life right now, you have one shot to make an impact on everything, to do something that fulfills your heart. You got one chance. Why squander it? Are you afraid? Are you nervous? Do you not know how to start? I guarantee you, if you quiet your mind down for prolonged periods, find a power spot, get the medicinal mushrooms in your system, work on the magnesium, ground yourself, do these things, look into shamanism. You can find your way out of the matrix, ladies and gentlemen, and you can take the red pill. The red pill is the awakening of the Muladhara chakra. That is taking the red pill. You unplug from the matrix when your shut off electrical system, your spine is turned back on. You can indeed take the red pill in this world. There are legitimate paths to gnosis, to realization. But if you remain plugged into this system and keep going through the motions out of fear or the fact that you don't want to make some sacrifices to grow, then you'll remain stuck here in this physical dimension. And sure, there's plenty of things to keep you occupied here in your state of slumber. But why would you want to stay like that? Why would you choose to remain stagnant when you could flow? Stagnation brings parasites, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dam up a river and watch what happens. Let's dam up a river and watch how in a very short period of time the bugs start coming, the parasites, the fish start dying. A lack of flow, ladies and gentlemen, is more often than not synonymous with accelerated decay. Decay is our worst enemy as Gnostics, as people who want to illuminate the torch of Hermes, the kundalini. Decay and lack of movement, lack of growth, that's our number one enemy. That is the real devil, ladies and gentlemen, that which destroys the true kingdom of God, which is this human vessel, this body. The promised land is in your head. All the stuff you read in the Bible and all these ancient texts, they're talking about processes that go on in your body. Your chakras are the true churches, ladies and gentlemen. Your chakras are the true churches of God. Your organs, your blood is the river of life. You can smell marijuana burning. It's amazing how many people smoke that stuff every day. You know, just to get off topic, people ask me all the time, what do you think of marijuana? I've already told you guys. People, when you use this stuff every day, it makes you, it's not good. It's not good. That's all I'm gonna say. People want to look for studies and it's a medicine and all this other stuff to justify their addictions. If it's so good for you, get off of it for 2 weeks, starting now. Let's see if you can do it. No, you're gonna fear the withdrawals, etc. I'm surprised I haven't been hit with one of these walnuts yet. I don't know if you guys can hear them, they keep dropping. But, again, you guys, decay, the acceleration of aging, the destruction of Solomon's temple, which is Solomon's temple, that's the body that you're walking around in. But they've got your neurochemistry, your brain chemistry, your hormones, your neurotransmitters, your rest, your circadian rhythm, your light exposure, all this stuff. They've got it so fried and out of alignment and out of balance that you can't remember that that your body is literally this Solomon's temple. It is the holy grail. It is the fountain of life. It is the fountain of youth. It is the chalice that brings you eternal life. The nectar of God, ladies and gentlemen, ambrosia. It is the crystal elixir, the human body. My God, we've been led astray. We've been led astray for far too long. We've got to get out of this mess, ladies and gentlemen. We have got to get out of this disgusting fucking mess. And I believe in you. And I want to see you thrive. I really do hope that this channel can benefit you in some way. Even if it's just motivating you to look at the world differently, or even to invest in a medicinal mushroom supplement, a complex. Maybe you can get your pets on them too. That's one thing that I highly suggest. You want to put your pet on something that's good for them, ladies and gentlemen? I'll put a link in the description box below to a really good mushroom supplement for your pets, for dogs and cats. Dogs and cats can benefit greatly from medicinal mushrooms, just like you. Medicinal mushrooms and Schizandra. Incredible. I don't recommend mixing them at first though. Just start off with one. Work with the Schizandra or work with the mushrooms. Get a mushroom complex. I like the complexes because it's got kind of like a... I'm not saying that you can't derive massive benefit from just taking like a reishi supplement, but due to the fact that we are so malnourished and so beaten over the head by the system, it's good to kind of get a lot of stuff in your system at once. So the medicinal mushroom complexes are very great, but you can even I would suggest getting a medicinal mushroom complex and then getting a chaga supplement on the side to take, like a chaga tea. Buy some chaga. Make chaga mushroom coffee. Start taking cordyceps. The medicinal mushrooms work very strongly on the mind, ladies and gentlemen, and they work very potently on the jing, which in Chinese medicine is housed in the kidneys primarily, and males, the reproductive organ. Jing is associated with your life force. It's one of the things that's assaulted so much here in this crazy world, your jing levels. Things like chaga rapidly rebuild jing levels, and so does the Schizandra, ladies and gentlemen. So again, I hope that my channel can do something beneficial for you. I really do. We live in a beautiful world, ladies and gentlemen, that's been hijacked by a crazy system. But even though the system's absolutely crazy, there's a lot of beauty to it. And there's a lot of things that the system even gives us that we take for granted. Waking up is learning to reject the temptation of the system, but at the same time, appreciating what's in front of you, appreciating what you have. Let's try to move let's move this over here, ladies and gentlemen. Look at all those colors back there. Phenomenal. I don't know what's going on with the lighting on this camera. Walking on goddamn walnuts. They're everywhere out here. Surrounded by these walnuts. These walnuts have very strong anti-parasitic properties to them. That's one thing that I find funny. Sometimes people who have health conditions literally have something growing outside of their window or in their backyard that could help get rid of the issue, whether it be inflammation, headaches, etc. And yes, there are herbs that you can take for headaches, things like feverfew. Oh, I should really make a video about that. Let's try to move this one more time. It looks like we're losing light here, folks. That looks a little bit better. It's amazing how many of these walnuts. There's so many that I have to kick them out from under my feet. Parasitic or anti-parasitic herbs like these green walnuts, ladies and gentlemen, they're known as vermifuges. And for a long time, I've been recommending that do a parasite cleanse. I've talked about how the Archon in the past regulates the Matrix. The Archon is the true architect of the Matrix. Why do you think in the movie The Matrix, the architect was called that? The architect, Archon? Come on, let's put two and two together. But I've talked about the Archon, extensively. The Archon, in my opinion, is a parasitic energy that works to some extent with the astral components of the physical parasites that get locked inside of our bodies here in the animal kingdom. That was kind of a word soup. But I don't want to get into a whole spiel about parasites right now, ladies and gentlemen. All I'm going to say is that we annually deworm our pets, but we don't annually deworm ourselves. Don't you see a problem with that? If the damned, I don't want to call your dog damned, it's just a figure of speech, excuse me. If your dog has worms, you have them. So many people that I've worked with over the years have developed so much benefit just from doing an annual parasite cleanse. So Humaworm is a good one. There's one called Paratrex. There's a few others. I have an extensive, probably 2-hour course on my Patreon page. Maybe not 2 hours, maybe a little less, about how to, deworm yourself. It's very simple. I brought this up because I was looking around, at the ground around me, and there's literally hundreds and hundreds of these anti-parasitic compounds that these trees grow. To me, that's a miracle almost. And I know that may sound crazy, but to me, the fact that I can go outside and find just tons of medicinal herbs, that's a miracle to me. That there's literally a living library, a living pharmacy around me. And everyone else around me has it too. The design of nature is beautiful. Although I do believe nature still is evolving and it needs to evolve, it's still a beautiful system. It's a self-consuming predatory world for sure. But it's still a beautiful system. So in this natural world, this living library as I like to call it, we have the Matrix, which is a concrete jungle world that runs on electricity and work. And it's been placed inside of this natural world, this kingdom, this heaven realm. Yes, this world was heaven, or it is heaven. And in this artificial world, we act like computer parts almost. Like if you look at a city from an airplane, it looks like a circuit board. People driving their cars, it's like electricity moving from one point to another and diodes sending signals and all this other crap. It's like we're in a simulation. And this Matrix, ladies and gentlemen, it may have started out as people just trying to become civilized. With the Industrial Revolution, we tried to produce things to help more people, to get the more foods out to people. It may have started out with good intentions, but the way things are here in 2020 are far from being good intentioned. Somewhere along the way, all of the wrong people got all of the power, at least the financial power. And these people are literal vampires, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not talking about good vampires like the elemental vampires. I'm talking about real bloodsuckers, ladies and gentlemen. These vampiric bloodlines have set up this entire Matrix system according to how they want it to be. And there's so many things I can say right now that I don't want to say because I want this channel to remain. It's unfortunate. Censorship is just a horrible thing. With the erection of the AI systems, ladies and gentlemen, and the constant spying and monitoring, where do you see this in 20 years? Where do you see this in 5 years? Where do you see this next year? The problem with advances in technologies is that when they get to a certain point, when they can start monitoring you and thinking for themselves, they start to produce their own systems of evolution. They start to think more efficiently than the humans that built them. This is a huge problem. What do you think the movie The Matrix was about? The machines started using humans as a fuel source. And the machines kept you in a computer-generated dream world. Well, they used your body's energy as a battery source, a fuel source. There are so many truths in that movie, ladies and gentlemen. There are so many truths. So, in the time it took me to make this 30-minute video, I've gotten 30 minutes of grounding. I've allowed massive amounts of this beautiful greenery to come into my eyes, into my photoreceptors. I've allowed massive amounts of this light to kiss my skin and enter into my brain. Light is a food source, ladies and gentlemen. Your brain, the inner portions of your brain crave light. Real light, not artificial light. The foundation of my health system is the basics, the real basics, which is grounding and lighting and clean water. Did you know that in the Zenda Vesta, a religious document of antiquity, it goes on to say that there's 3 fundamental prerequisites, 3 pillars, if you will, that are responsible for keeping any civilization flourishing both physically and spiritually. There are 3 fundamental prerequisites. They are, I shit you not, pristine water, pristine air, and pristine food. Let me repeat that for you. Those 3 fundamental prerequisites are pristine air, pristine water, and pristine food. And you even have people like the Surgeon General saying that 70% of human ailments and pathologies and diseases and disorders, etc., are directly derived from and caused from the food you eat, the air you breathe, and the water that you drink. 70%. In my opinion, it's more along the lines of 89% to 92%. Maybe about 80-20 split would be more fair, because our environment has a lot to do with how well we are. Which is why I've always put a huge emphasis on modifying the terrain of your home. Modify the lighting systems. For less than $100, you can get enough shungite from me to make a grid around your home, multiple grids. You could get enough shungite from me to place larger pieces on top of all of your electronics. You could also buy incandescent light bulbs and get away from all the fluorescents and the CFLs, energy-saving nonsense light bulbs that are total Trojan horse weapon systems. Well, incandescent light bulbs are not as efficient, and they don't last anywhere near as long as LEDs and CFLs, but they don't produce the intense lumens. They don't have massive amounts of blue light. For less than $100, the lighting you could get the shungite, you can get a couple of Himalayan salt lamps and some candles. Firelight is much healthier than LEDs, so I'm not going to get into it in this video, ladies and gentlemen. I've said it multiple times. Repetition of a message constitutes mental programming. I'm trying to at least point people in the right direction, excuse me. So anyways, I guess the core principle that I'm trying to preach here with this message is that the Matrix is real, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just a figure of speech that I use. And the Matrix operates by way of redirecting your energetic highways that keep your body filled full of vril, also known as orgone or life force. The Matrix systematically has selectively bred higher thinking out of us. They've separated us from the Kabbalistic tree. We have within our mind, ladies and gentlemen, the ability to enter multiple realms. With our minds, we have the ability to literally enter into the realms of all of the Sephira or Sephiroth on the Kabbalistic tree of life. We were designed to experience massive amounts of, to just contemplate reality after my first kundalini experience. There were times where I would literally sit in my car for sometimes upwards of 2 or 3 hours and just think about what I had experienced. Kundalini is going to force you to unpack a lot of stuff. It rocks, it dissolves every little thing you know about yourself, and that's why it's so dangerous. Someone recently asked me a question about, I want to experience Kundalini, but I don't want to sacrifice what I have now. Well, that's not for you then. It's just not. I could tell by the way that you worded your comment, your question, that there's too much of an internal struggle with the you that you've become. And it's not judgment, ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk more about it in the near future, about how to integrate these experiences into your life after them, and why certain people should probably avoid Kundalini. Kundalini is a very shamanic energy. When it wakes up within your system, it causes the release of certain chemicals, tryptamines, etc., in your brain that make you have what appear to be strong hallucinogenic experiences. See, the body was designed, it was engineered to produce these chemicals. You have hallucinogenic chemicals and constituents, moving through your consciousness right now while you're sober. When you bite the apple of Eden and the Kundalini moves up the cerebral spinal system, and the biting of the apple is the two serpents stimulating your pineal gland, ladies and gentlemen. When you bite the apple of Eden, certain brain-related chemicals and constituents release and allow the brain to work the way it was designed to work, under the jurisdiction of the 12 apostles of Christ, also known as the 12 cranial nerves. And when this happens, you can see the truth. The pearly gates open, and you realize that you've been lied to heavily by religion, by the world that you live in, by the so-called experts, by the preachers even. Most preachers don't even know, I don't think they know what the hell they're even talking about. They're promising you some eternal life after this life. They're pretty much just treating this world as like some, it's like you're waiting for a bus to come pick you up. Just have faith in Jesus. Just have faith in God. Everything will be okay. Don't work too hard. Just focus on God. Leave everything in God's hands. And get ready for the promised land. I'm sorry, but that's a highly spiritually immature and irresponsible way of looking at things. In any religion that promotes that type of ideology, it's poisonous. We're put here to be the shepherds of the earth, just like Christ, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think? Who do you think Christ would want to be like? Or who do you think Christ would want to be with? A bunch of people who didn't take any action here in this world and just waited for the afterlife while they're afraid, chewing their nails? Am I going to go to hell? Or people that rejected all that and just did what was right because it was the right thing to do in their heart? You need to look up the weighing of the heart, ladies and gentlemen. The ritual in ancient Egypt, where your heart, your metaphoric heart, was weighed upon death on the scales of Ma'at. And if your heart was heavier than the feather on the opposite side of the scale, your soul would be eaten by Sobek, also known as Sebek, which is a crocodile head or alligator headed deity. There was also another depiction of like a chimera. More often than not, on the weighing of the heart ceremony, you see Sobek or Sebek, as they call it. I find it really interesting, before we continue, that Sobi, or some call Sobe, has a reptilian kind of motif to it. Why did they use the words S-O-B-E? It's very similar to Sobek, which just, instead of S-O-B-E, it's S-O-B-E-K. Very interesting. But it might just be by chance, but who knows? Maybe the people were aware of the symbolism. More often than not, though, in the weighing of the heart ceremony, you see people's hearts being weighed on the scales of Ma'at, and there would be like either a chimera entity or Sobek underneath waiting to eat the soul so that it could be recycled here to relearn lessons that you did not learn here in this world. So how does our heart become heavy, and why does the heart need to be lighter than a feather, ladies and gentlemen? Well, when the heart becomes heavy, it's because we have guilts and repressions and things that we wish we would have done with our lives. Maybe hatred and bitterness. These things, ladies and gentlemen, aren't actually physically heavy. They're heavy spiritually because they anchor us to the physical world. If you leave this world with weights connecting you to this world, don't you think that you're naturally going to be anchored right on back? It only makes sense. So in my opinion, when your heart is heavy, ladies and gentlemen, it's out of attachment to this world, and that can be through bitterness or hatred or all sorts of different qualities. When your heart is light as a feather, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have a bunch of baggage, guilt, and all this other crap. So there's so much more that could be said about that. I highly suggest looking into the 42 laws of Mayat. I think it's 42, it might be 48. It's been a long time since I've read those. And yeah, I mean, that's not something that I live by, but I have read it multiple times, and there's certain pieces that I've taken out that I do try to live my life by. And one of the greatest ways, ladies and gentlemen, to start lightening the burden on your heart, at least in my opinion, is to start familiarizing yourself with learning to control that which you can control, and stop trying to control things that are outside of your control. This is how we develop a heavy heart. When we try to control things that we have no control over, it leads to frustration, resentments, anger, depression, you name it. So I just recently today put a video here on the YouTube channel about this. And I even recommended a book for you to read. I highly suggest the audiobook. It's called The Little Book of Stoicism. You can get it on Scribd, scribd.com, or you can get it on Amazon Audible. Highly suggest that book. Load it up and listen. I had such a great time listening to that audiobook on my daily walk. I just devoured that book. I thought it was incredible. There's a few bad reviews on Amazon, but you know, there's always going to be one of those or a few. It was so enjoyable. I took my medicinal mushrooms before I went on my walk like I normally do, lit my brain up, and went and listened to the beautiful words of that book while I was just saturated by just the beauty of nature, ladies and gentlemen. It is so intense. In the future, I'm going to be putting some videos together about how to increase your eye's ability to take in more light, to be able to see more. Because when a lot of people aren't, their brains, their eyes, their bodies and their brain chemistry is not decoding nature properly. And because of that, when you look at a tree, you're not blown the fuck away. When your brain is nourished properly, ladies and gentlemen, and certain regions of your brain are being targeted or specifically and intentionally stimulated, you can actually look at nature for what it is and be blown the hell away. This world is a literal paradise, ladies and gentlemen. It was designed to be heaven. Heaven. You're in heaven right now. You are in heaven right now. And the only thing keeping you from seeing that, ladies and gentlemen, is how your brain chemistry has been rewired, and your neurotransmitters, and your mitochondrial health, and all these pieces to the puzzle of you. They've been manipulated and augmented and taken out of alignment. And because you're an entity, because you are an organism that requires alignment to be able to decode the truth, or at least observe reality the proper way, the way that you were designed to observe it, because we've been taken out of alignment. That's the puzzle. That is the magnum opus. That is the search for the philosopher's stone, ladies and gentlemen. That is the path up the stairway of heaven, which is your human spine, by the way. It's just like that Tool song, I know the pieces fit. You're a puzzle that has been separated. You've got to rebuild yourselves, just like Osiris had to be rebuilt in Egypt. His body parts were scattered throughout the Nile River. Osiris being rebuilt, ladies and gentlemen, is a story of you being rebuilt by the divine qualities of the kundalini. What do you think the goddess who rebuilt Osiris represented? That's a kundalini deity, ladies and gentlemen, in many ways, shapes, and forms similar yet different to Mayat, who weighs the heart on the scales of justice. This is a beautiful experience. The only thing keeping you out of paradise or the promised land is how your brain and your neural chemistry and all of these things have been rewired and rearranged. trying to come up with a good analogy or a metaphor to represent this. You're like a computer that's had all the parts taken out, and like it's like you're like a computer that was, you are a, I'm not even going to say that, excuse me. I was going to say that you're a top of the line computer that the parts have been rearranged in, but I'm going to start wrapping this one up, you guys. It's getting a little late, and we're 45 minutes into this lecture. I love you all. I hope you're staying well. I really do. Times are crazy right now. You've got to keep your mind on what's important, and what's important is what you can control, ladies and gentlemen. Focus on what you can control. This is the only way to become strong here in this world. You don't become strong by worrying and fretting and freaking the hell out over things you cannot control. No, you focus on what's within your grasp, the things that you can control, which one of the most divine qualities that you can control is your health. And you regulate and control your health by what you do with your time, what you put into your system. Yada, yada, yada. So anyways, you guys, I'm going to wrap this one up. This is just a brief message. I love you all, and may peace be with you.